Hey there. So good to see you all. I'm very honored and excited to talk to you guys about what I've been working on. My name is Doug Beggs, and I'm going to be talking to you. Yeah, see? There you go. Thank you. That's typically the response I get when I go places. I'm going to talk to you about what's new with plugins. I just went the wrong direction. That's backwards. Doug Banks. Little bit about me. I have been doing game development stuff since the mid-90s. Also stints at Google or trying to make my own games. My very first gig was making a game called Uprising for a company called Cyclone Studios, hence my username, which I'm still very proud of. You can look it up on YouTube. Anyway, I want to ask you guys some questions. How many of you have tried writing a plugin in here? Pretty much everybody, self-selecting crowd. How many have published a plugin? Great, so I pretty much got the plugin expert crowd. Who would describe yourselves as experts in writing plugins? Come on. 1, 2, 3. I'd barely raise my hand, but I had to wear this sticker, so sure. So I'm going to give you an overview of the talk. First, we're going to talk about doc widgets, a new way of presenting a GUI in a plugin. Next, we'll talk about plugin actions, a new way of mapping keyboard actions to your plugin. And finally, just kind of a road for what's ahead in plugin and studio as a whole. So first up is doc widgets. A plugin can now create a GUI in a doc widget instead of just drawing it into the 3D viewport. The tired old school way of doing things, you have a plugin in a 3D viewport. You can see, your GUI shows up here. It doesn't really look and feel like the rest of Studio. It gets in the way. I mean, that's not a very exciting scene behind there, but I can imagine there might be someday something pretty cool that you don't really want to have hidden. And even worse, if you have 3 plugins active and they're all stepping on each other, that's not great. So the new hotness is you create a doc widget. So this is an example of a doc widget right there. Each plugin can make and manage its own. It works just like any other doc widget, like the Explorer, like the Properties widget. You can drag it around, resize it, pull it off, whatever you want. Also, you can style it so that it looks and feels exactly like the rest of Studio. How do you use it? Is it hard? No, it's not. So first of all, you make one in script. You make one of these little descriptors, kind of talking about the properties of the doc widget you want to have. Docking states, right, left side, where's it going to start its life? This business about enabled gets into a key thing to understand with doc widgets. Think about the Explorer, think about Properties widget. When you open up Studio, they're just there. You do your work, they're still just hanging out there. You can close them. If you close it and restart Studio, it remembers that it's closed. All of our doc widgets behave that same way. So there's the notion of when time and space begins, should this thing be visible? That's init enabled. And then there's a question of, do I want to do the normal restore widget logic, which I just described, like Studio will remember where it was and put it back there? If you do, great, just say false. If you want to override it and always make it show up or always make it hide, then you can set that to true. And then some sizing information and layout information to get stuff started. That's all optional. Then to create it, you just, oops, that went faster than expected. You just pass in this descriptor, and you also have to pass in a unique name, unique to the scope of your plugin. And you get back a plugin GUI. What is a plugin GUI? It is essentially just like a screen GUI. If you're familiar with putting elements in a screen GUI, buttons, text labels, whatever, same idea. So this is an example. You're throwing in a button that says hello. When you click on it, then it's going to print something. Further thoughts, you almost always, I don't know how people normally make their old school plugins, but for a doc widget, almost certainly you want to have a toolbar, you want to have a button that toggles it on and off, because that's how pretty much all the other doc widgets in Studio work, and you want it to just feel like a natural tool. So you're going to want to add those buttons. You're going to want to remember to keep in mind that a user can close the doc widget without even touching your toolbar, because it has that little X built in the corner. I can highlight it right there. People can click that to close your doc widget. So if you want to keep your button in sync, you want to listen to the enabled state and turn that button on and off accordingly. It's not rocket science. There's examples in the code later, so just a thing to keep in mind. Plugin widgets in action. It took me, I was completely unfamiliar with the code, the terrain widget code. It took me an hour or two maybe to port it from its old on the 3D viewport state into a dock widget state. It then took me many, many days to make it look and feel different. But actually just getting it to show up in the dock widget itself is not that hard. The challenge is more thinking about what that does to your design and how should it all look and feel, and hopefully we're going to provide you some solutions for that. But we have the new terrain tools that are working in a dock widget. You can see you can pop it out just like any other dock widget there. Things to keep in mind, again, designed for a dock widget. Keep in mind that it can show and hide itself without going through your toolbar code. You don't want it to think. You don't want to use a dock widget for something that's kind of a mode, like because they're holding down a key, this GUI appears, or because they clicked this button, that they're like pressing a button or something. It's a tool that is available that they can like tell it to shut up and go away, but it's not really the best GUI for something that's kind of modal. Maybe that does still appear in the 3D viewport. That might be a better way to do it. I will say, as an aside, I did not realize that powers that be had split this into a thing where I have to keep pushing the button until the whole slide appears. So let's just do it that way. Great. Again, make sure that the button toggles on and off with your widgets. So, like I said, a few hours work to get the toolbar, to get the terrain to show up in a dock widget. A good chunk of time just getting the buttons and the fonts and the coloring and all these things to kind of look and feel like properties. All of that goodness is rolled up in a GitHub library. There will be links to this later on that we really encourage you to A, use for your own plugin widgets, and B, add to, improve, whatever. It'll give you a consistent look and feel. And as soon as we get an API for dark theme, which hopefully is coming soon, we will make these widgets responsive to dark theme. So when a user changes theme, all of these widgets and anything built with these widgets will respond appropriately. Limitations, the user input service currently only deals with the main 3D viewport. If you ask where the mouse is, it's talking about the mouse in here, not in here. If you ask what keys are down, it's talking about what keys are down when you have the focus here and here, not so much in here. The keyboard we could possibly move over, thinking about doing that. The mouse probably isn't going to move, because a mouse inherently, like if it says I'm at 1010, that's relative to something, relative to the top corner of the viewport. So that might be like a whole new API, but the user input service is not going to be moving over. Other limitations, we can't do flyover GUI elements, which I didn't really think about until I ran into trying to add a dropdown. I was like, oh, snap. It doesn't work, because you'll notice that like on a real native dropdown, we could have it extend past the edge of Studio. Plugin widget really is just a square inside of which we're running a renderer exactly like this. It is not a small step. Don't hunt me down on this, because I don't have the clout necessary to make it happen. But it's not a small step to like actually do 3D rendering in one of these things as well. This is pretty much just another rendered window. So we can't like have stuff in this window gushing out over. We might get into other types of GUI elements that you can create from inside of Studio. Like a obvious one would be like a dialog box, or maybe flyover elements like this. But right now, don't have support for that. Some examples, again, terrain tools was a pretty quick and easy port. Trying to see if there's other obvious examples there. The animation editor got ported over. I know Tiffany moved the tag editor, and there's some also really cool ones found online. Someone re-implemented the entire Explorer as a dock widget, and honestly did a better job than we did. So it's kind of a superior tool, which is cool. Like, it's exactly the point of this project, is to empower you guys to make Studio that much better. Next topic would be plugin actions. So the idea is that a plugin can create an action. Our Studio tool is built in Qt. Qt has a built-in notion of an action that can automatically plug into menus and plug into keyboard shortcuts and all kinds of cool things. Now your plugins can make actions just like that. Old way of doing things, if you wanted a keyboard shortcut, you could build it right into your plugin code. Like if they are pressing M and N, then this bonkers stuff should happen. That's not great, because someone else could have also bound M and N to something else, and then it's going to do both things. It's not great because they can't see the mapping. If they open up, Studio has a built-in notion of like, what are my keyboard shortcuts? Your plugin shortcuts aren't going to be visible in there. Users can't easily remap unless you personally write remapping code, and then like every plugin has to rewrite their own mapping code. And if the user happens to map, if the user, like you mapped m plus n to do some cool thing in your plugin, the user mapped m plus n to do something they prefer inside of Studio, your plugin may never even see that shortcut. The system will gobble it up before it even gets to shortcut land, or it gets to your plugin. And it only works if the 3D viewport has focus, because again, now we're worrying about the mouse being a bunch of other places. So the new hotness, again, is you can create a plugin action. You bound that to keyboard shortcuts, fixes all these problems, no collisions. It's exposed, it's customizable, works as long as the application has focus. So it's a much better way to add keyboard shortcuts to your process. Again, super, super easy to use. You create an action. You need to give it a unique ID, some user-facing text that's kind of succinct, and user-facing text that's a little more chatty. And then when it's triggered, do your worst. That's pretty much it. That is a plugin action right there. Then the way this manifests is if I bring up my Studio built-in notion of keyboard mouse shortcuts and search on any of the things that just went in your text fields, that thing will show up. You can add a shortcut, and you're off to the races. We also recently added the ability to throw in an icon there. That was done since these slides were created. But if you want to be able to, if all of your plugins actions have a nice little icon, go nuts. Friendly reminder, you might want to tie these in with the undo service. We're kind of pushing that as a good thing for plugins to be aware of. You can bind all this, and then a nice, easy workflow for your users. Final topic, what's next? What's coming up for an exciting for plugins? Updating to, like I mentioned, we might update user input service, so at least you could get what keys are down inside of the plugin GUIs. We are going to add a Studio theme API that isn't just for plugins, but of course mostly useful for plugins. So you can kind of query what are the current color set. You can get notified when the color set changes, and even provide tools to change the color set yourself. And that's pretty much it. And for what it's worth, what I'm working on next isn't related to plugins, but since you all asked, I'm working on accurate Play Solo, which means when you run Play Solo, there's actually a server and a client running inside of Studio, and not some weird hybrid that gives you things that pretend to work but don't really work. Thank you. And that is currently making me crazy. It's rough, but hopefully almost done. So, summary. We're really excited to see people take their plugins, port them over, and make it look and feel like a native Studio thing. You can have the GUI in a dock widget. You can use our shared library to give it that custom Studio look and feel. You can tie in your keyboard shortcuts. This is something we're always pushing on. We're eager to hear your thoughts about what else could make plugin development better, so keep us posted. Ways you can get involved, again, update your old plugins, for sure. It is super easy. I'm not just selling you a line there. Write some new plugins. Definitely, please use, not Q&A yet. Use and extend our library of look and feel widgets on GitHub. We really want your contributions there. And dream big. Like I mentioned, this video of, I didn't actually get to see the plugin itself, but I got to see a video of the Explorer one. Really made me happy, because you guys are far more creative, into this, talented, excited, motivated than we are. So our goal is that you could make Studio into anything you want. We want to put the tools in your hand, so push us. Go nuts with this and make something exciting. And yeah, again, here's the example. I did have a photo of it. Someone re-implemented the whole of Explorer in their own little plugin widget, which is a pretty boss move, I think. So that's it. I got that out pretty fast, but open it up for any questions and answers you have, thoughts, comments, feedback, complaints. Thanks.
That's some exciting stuff. My question is, right now, the workflow for developing plugins is not super fun to go through.
I agree. I learned that the hard way. Yes.
Is there anything coming down the pipeline that might make that easier for us to develop plugins more quickly and efficiently?
The honest answer is nothing that I know of right now, but I know that I am advocating hard for it. I think the good news is the Studio team is getting more and more into making plugin widgets. I think, so bad news is nothing immediate. Good news, I think because of plugin widgets, there's going to be more effort to develop things in Lua, so more of us will be having to drink this miserable pain of writing plugins. So there will be a lot more motivation to get this together right. So,
excellent.
Yes,
thank you.
Back there.
I have two lightning questions for you.
So
first off, I noticed a lot of widget plugins, some of them that were created before the dark theme. They don't switch to dark theme automatically when you change it in studio settings. Are there any plans to
Yes, there are. That was one of the points I went past. We need first an API to expose it to Lua. Once that's in, first order of business is to update that GitHub library that I mentioned so that anything there will adapt to dark theme. So anything we build with those and anything anyone else builds with those will automatically work with dark theme or any theme.
Okay, thank you. And my second lightning question is there ever the possibility that widgets could have their own mini 3D viewport? For example, have a local cube or a local model, or on a viewport in the widget.
I think that's definitely technically doable, and I think the good news is this is the first time I do not do graphics code at all, so this was hilarious. But I did spend some time in graphics code because this is the first time we have two different rendering frames in Studio. So the fact that that threshold has been crossed makes it a lot more likely to get into stuff like multiple windows all rendering a 3D view, or split screen, things like that. So definitely possible. I think what would help would be a compelling use case story. This is this thing where I need to have two 3D viewports in order for it to get done. And as that volume increases, then it's doable for sure.
OK, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm not sure if you're in the loop on the whole package management system that Roblox is working on right now, but
yes-ish.
Is that Studio Widget library that you have on GitHub right now, is that going to be a package at some point? And will development switch over to there, or is it still going to continue on GitHub?
That's a great question. You may be asking, see who's in the room.
It's all right.
I personally I'm advocating strongly for, I would like to see Studio be more open so that people can export the files and store them, share them however they want, edit them however they want. There is a vision that is somewhat competing where Studio is more all in the cloud. Everything's kind of out there in the ether, and we have version control and all that stuff automatically built in. Those two are kind of conflicting. The everything in the cloud vision is definitely far down the road. So I did the GitHub thing because I know, like I said, it was a pain and a half writing those widgets, and I wanted other people to use them as soon as possible. GitHub's a way to get it out. As the rest of this environment settles out, I want it to be in the right place. I'm happy to move it. I'm less happy to rewrite it, but minor changes, whatever. Yeah, I want it to be shared in the way that is most useful to you guys.
Sounds good. Cool.
You people.
If we start having split screens in Studio, we'll eventually move to the Roblox player.
I can't speak to that. The fact that it exists at all suggests that it is possible. The question of whether our lowest end platforms like an iPhone or something could support it is a little harder to say, and that's where I should shut up and tell us go ask a graphics person. Yeah, I think people are excited about that for sure.
Thank you.
Hi, so I have two questions. The first one is asking whether plugins can fire sound events.
Can they now, or when will they be able to?
OK, cool. Thank you. That's awesome. So they can. Well, OK. Second question is, will we be able to find plugins easier in the future? I've been trying to find plugins recently for better terrain editing tools.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm searching through them on Studio, sometimes it will only show 4 plugins on a page, but there'll be 10 different pages of plugins. I'll go to the next page and there'll only be 3 showing, and they'll all be in random orders and stuff like that.
I have not really dealt with that side of the code, but that is good to know. I see you around, so let me know about this in a situation where I can send it to people who can do something about that. I know we are aware of and trying to fix the general issues with search, that it's not as great as it could be.
OK, thank you.
Yeah. A lot of love for that side of the room, I guess. We're doing our best. I know.
Are there any plans to have like a notification or something that says that there's updates for plugins available and potentially make that disableable if you like older plugins for some reason?
That's a really good idea. Again, that's more of a back-end web systems question, which is I sit next to them and could yell at them, but I wouldn't be doing that myself. Do you have an avenue to communicate with people at Roblox, or am I like, if I wanted to be reminded to do something, can I give them my contact info, or? Oh, there we go. Grab him. No, just kidding. But yes, he can help you out. Yes?
So I've been having huge problems with playing sounds from my plugins.
Yeah.
So basically, sounds don't play anymore when you put them in workspace, when Studio is paused. There is a function in Sound Service which allows me to play a sound but not to stop it. So are you going to look into this, maybe?
I wasn't aware that was an issue. Is this related to what you were just talking about, or? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, OK, thank you.
Awesome. So it sounds like Max could help you out with details. I feel like I should cover the expert part and just say, ask me about, well, plugin widgets, actually, that I'm an expert in. That I will own. Just not plugins. Anyone else? We're good to go? Awesome. Thank you very much.